Here at the Hervey Bay Library, we have an absolute wealth of material on the history of the Bay, including this fantastic book by Joan Christensen. But if you want to get a truly immersive experience about our history, there's nowhere better to go than the Hervey Bay Historical Village and Museum. Today, we're extremely fortunate to be joining Nicholas Everard and John Andersen of the village as they talk about our history.
So I understand you've been in Hervey Bay for a long time now, and that your family was involved in many businesses.
Yes, Nick, I've lived here all my life, and my grandparents come down here from Maryborough in the 1920s and been here ever since. And so I'm a fifth generation from Maryborough and here. We've got seventh generation of our family in Maryborough. The museum here have actually made a replica of the Haddo shop. We had a lot of businesses at Scarness, dance hall, cafe, barber shop, first news agency in the Bay, cake shops, skating rink. So please come and have a look at the 1930 shop.
What did kids my age used to do in Hervey Bay?
Oh, well, there was the beach, picture shows. You're going back now to the 1940s and 50s and 60s, dances, skating, not as much entertainment as there is now, but still people were quite busy, and shopping was quite different. You didn't have any Coles or Woolies. You couldn't go buy, if you look around the shop, you won't find any cans of Coke or anything like that. But we had a local business here, Skillingtons, and they would make soft drinks and had a crown seal on the top. So you drank Skillington soft drink, you bought biscuits in the shop, and it would be weighed out on the scales, and the shopkeeper would put them into a paper bag, not wrapped in anything like that biscuits are now. And then interestingly, after you paid for it, he would put your change on this little tray. If you have a look at that, Nick, there's some change, pennies and threepences, halfpennies. But if you see the sign underneath, it's rather interesting. They found if they had a sign under there, when you come to pick your change up, you saw that sign, and that sign there made people buy that product. So they would sell 5 times as much Kiwi boot polish if they had a sign there with that on. If you wanted lollies, then you come over here and you bought some lollies, be weighed on the scales, and you'd go away with a little bag full of lollies.
What did these products used to come to Hervey Bay in? What packaging?
They would come in bulk. So the biscuits, the shopkeeper would get big lots of biscuits in big drums. Tea would come wrapped like that, loose tea, and the shopkeeper would weigh it out. And that would all come down by rail. And interestingly, in the up until about the 1960s, Hervey Bay shops would all close on a Wednesday afternoon, and all the shopkeepers would go to Maryborough, to all the wholesalers up there, and they'd buy all of their goods. But then Hervey Bay opened on Saturday afternoon, so all the Maryborough people would come down, go swimming and do some shopping, although there were no shopping centres, but little shops along the front, and buy some stuff there, buy even hot water and have a picnic on the beach. No thermoses. They would buy hot water and go over and take the teapot across, pay 6 pence, 5 cents to get some hot water, make a cup of tea over the front.
Do you think that this was what boosted our tourism in Hervey Bay?
I think, well, initially people moved here and lived here, and it was only probably in the 1970s, that suddenly the rest of Australia realised that Hervey Bay is a pretty good place. It's got a really good climate, beautiful beaches, we've got Fraser Island there, and all of a sudden Hervey Bay changed from a small, sleepy little place where everyone knew everyone else. Was probably 2,500 people in the whole district, and suddenly every year it doubled, went to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and suddenly it's up now to 60,000 people. Nick, this is a model of Main Street, Pyalba in 1925. If you look down here, you'll see the cenotaph. There's an actual photo up there of the day it was opened in front of this building, which is an exact replica, all the buildings as they were in the 1920s. So it's very interesting that this building here was burnt down in 1947. These new buildings were built, but you can still see the back of those buildings today. If you go over and have a look, you see the peaks and the sticking above the facades there.
So, sorry, how did Main Street get the name of Main Street?
Well, it was the main street that came in from way out, 6 k's out on the Arabian Farms Road, on Burrell Road.
Yep.
One big long straight, and it was the main street of the whole area. And they were the main shops. Pyalba was the shopping centre. Scarness really was the entertainment area. So Scarness had the swimming enclosure, had the skating rink, had all the entertainment, dance halls, pictures. There were 3 picture theatres at Scarness. So Scarness was the entertainment area, Pyalba the shopping area, just in Main Street. Torquay, there was very, very little except the hotel. Urangan, there was a hotel and that was about all. So there was very little except for Pyalba and Scarness in the early days.
So what shops were on Main Street?
Here, Murphy's were the big general store and they virtually had everything. So you could buy anything you wanted in there. Food items, clothing, shoes. They had tea rooms. You could have a haircut there. News agent, where they'd sell papers there. They had a big bakery. So they were universal providers. You went there and got everything. Christensen's was another one, very similar but a bit smaller. And then there were other little ones, tailors and barbers and things like that. So that was the main area of business in the Bay, Main Street, Pyalba. Every Sunday, Nick, we do demonstrations over there. We talk about corn, we talk about blacksmithing and also woodworking. So it's very, very hands-on in the museum.
So the mobility corridor is used now, but I understand it used to be used more frequently?
It surely was used much more frequently. In 1896, when the railway line came down, it stopped at Pyalba. Originally it was going to go to Point Vernon, but it never made there. But then a few years later, they extended the line from Pyalba to Urangan. That's when the big pier was built. And the mobility corridor now is the original railway line from Pyalba to Urangan. And it was a very, very busy line. As a matter of fact, at one stage, the Maryborough line, Maryborough to here, was the most profitable line in Queensland, because not only did all the cane sugar go up that was cut, all the bag sugar came back and went through the pier on the big boats. There was a lot of coal loaded there, there was a lot of newsprint come in, there was a lot of fertiliser come in, and on top of that as well, there were passenger trains up to Maryborough and back and rail motors every day, so it was a very, very busy line.
Were the passenger trains busy? Were they always populated?
Always fairly busy, and to do senior, there was no senior school here in 1958. So in 1958 and 59 I had to travel to Maryborough every morning on the train, left Scarness railway station at 20 to 7 to go to Maryborough to the high school to do senior, and I would get on the train to come home at night and get back to Scarness at 20 to 7 at night.
So how were the trains powered? Were they coal or electric?
Well, they were all steam trains. There were no diesels, all steam, and also rail motors. Now a rail motor was like a small train, except the motor in that was a little diesel, like a little diesel engine in a tractor, and they were bone crashes because they would rattle and roll and rock around the place with these steel wheels on steel lines, and they were always horrible to travel in. But they were rail motors and then steam trains as well.
Why were the trains removed?
That's a very good question, and also interesting fact that there's about 30 level crossings between Takura and Urangan, and even in the early days when there were very few cars and maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people in the bay, even in those days there were quite a few fatalities. People got killed on the railway, even out at Arawi crossing, there were people killed there. Many through the bay with accidents all the time. So you can imagine these days a train coming down from Maryborough, going across the road at least 30 times. Every day there's probably 4 or 5 cars run into the train, so it's, unless there were boom gates on every crossing all the way through, it would be just not feasible to have it today.
Were the laws restrict back then with the trains?
As far as the road goes,
Yeah.
they always had right of way, and there was always a big cross sign with railway crossing on it, and they're probably still around. So you always had to stop at the railway line, but very few people probably did. So there were many, many accidents. Right in Main Street at Pyalba, near where the whale is there, near the Discovery Sphere, there was a very bad accident, probably the last one before the rails finished, when a man was driving a big timber truck down Main Street. He was killed there on that crossing. A train ran into him and he died there instantly, just on the spot. So many, many accidents.
Did the arrival of the railway boost the development of Hervey Bay?
Nick, probably more than anything else, the railway opened up Hervey Bay. And mind you, in those days, we're talking about 1900, late 1890s, 1900, it wasn't known as Hervey Bay. There was Point Vernon and Pyalba, Scarness, Torquay and Urangan. So it wasn't known as Hervey Bay. Although the bay out there was called Hervey Bay, this area was separate little hamlets all along the foreshore. So there was no road down from Maryborough. So the only way that goods and people could get from Maryborough to here was by rail, because the road was just a bush track and there would have been horse and sulkies, very few cars, no cars in the early days. So the railway really opened up Hervey Bay. And then when the pier was built and opened in 1916, that really developed all along the foreshore and back further, mainly around Cypress Street in the early days. So it had a big, big influence in the development of Hervey Bay.
So what was the Dundurran School like before it closed down?
Oh, Nick, that's an interesting question. This building, actual Dundurran School, was actually one of 7 one-teacher schools that were in the bush around the back between Takura and the river heads. And they were the days when there were very few schools in Hervey Bay. The first one was Pyalba, but these schools were out there before even Pyalba was there. All just one teacher, and they were there for a very special reason. Because when the first settlers arrived in Maryborough, between the 1850s and the 1890s, most of them were farmers. There was nothing in the bay. They went onto the farms, no shops, so they had to be self-sufficient. So they went farming, and that's where all the people were, in the bush, on the farms.
Do you think the schools would have been as populated as they are today?
These schools probably averaged about 25, 30 students, pupils, and they were every grade from grade 1 to grade 7. But one teacher taught the whole lot. If you look at the desk here, grade 7s might have been at the back and the little tiny ones were down the front. No books, they're all slates, so it was quite different. And inkwells, no biros, so they would write with pen and ink and learn how to do running writing like this. Today, of course, most kids can only do printing because of computers, but everyone learned running writing. The interesting thing about slate, it will write on itself, and then you could rub it out. So you had a slate like that, and you could use it over and over again. Nothing was wasted.
Did you want me to write my name?
Yeah.
Was high school the same?
Yes, I was actually one of the second group of secondary department students at Pyalba School. So that started in 1955, and before that there was no high school at all in Hervey Bay. You had to go to Mirrabah. 55, the secondary department started at Pyalba School, and I was a second year there. And then it wasn't long after that that the high school was built where it is now, in Beach Road, behind the existing Pyalba Primary School.
So what was behaviour like back in the early days?
Oh, Nick, behaviour in the early days was very, very strict. Every school, the headmaster and the teachers had a cane made from proper cane. And if you were naughty or didn't do as you were told or didn't do your homework, you got what was called the cuts. And to get the cuts, you put your hand out like that, and the teacher would take the cane and very swiftly come down on your hand. If you were very bad, you got one on that hand, one on the other hand, another one here. Probably 6 was the most. And then when you were going back to your place, you got one on your bare backside as well. So it did a lot of good.
And was that used for all wrongdoings?
Well, yeah, it had to be fairly wrong, like not doing homework or misbehaving in class. So you were sent to the head teacher, and then there was a register kept. But Nick got 5 cuts because he didn't do his homework and come in late to school. So it was all recorded. But the children had respect for their teachers. If the teacher said something, then the children did it, which is a bit different to today when there's none of that corporal punishment, and probably maybe not for the better.
So do you think they should bring the cane back today?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I'd get caned if I said that. Yeah. So and also it was only the boys that ever got the cane. The girls were very lucky. So only the boys, but that was enough to keep everyone straight and narrow and very honest, and respect for the teachers. And not only for teachers, but everybody respected the law, the police. They had authority, teachers had authority, and it was respected. Parents had authority. You actually tried to do everything right to please your parents. But apparently today it's sort of changed quite a bit.
I hope you've enjoyed learning about the interesting development of Hervey Bay. If you want to learn more about our history, please head to the Hervey Bay Historical Village and Museum on Zephyr Street, Scarness.